welcome to a new Harry's Garage, and you join me in the garage just before a bit of a trip, because in the morning I'm setting off down to France. Some of you might know we have a boat down there, and I need to take some things down and also bring some things back. Now, any sensible person on a trip like that in November would probably take either the Jaguar XJR or perhaps the Range Rover. But no, I thought, no, let's have a bit more fun. Let's take one of the cars out of the garage. And I looked round and couldn't decide which one to take. We needed a big boot. I could take the Espada, but that's a bit greedy on super unleaded, and the tanks are quite small, so you're forever filling it up on a long journey. Or the Testarossa, and I thought, well, it hasn't been out for a bit, so I'm going to take this, but I've had to do a bit of prepping because the weather's not very nice outside. It's been going to be cold and wet, so I had to do some prepping on it, which I'm going to take you around now. And the main areas I had to look at, well, first of all, after the trip to the Sahara, just the bottom bits of the chassis, just at the nose, it just sort of kissed the sand every now and then and just worn off a bit of underseal. So I use a special German paint that you treat rust with, and then just prep that. But the key to a journey like this in November is a product I know from the motorbike world, and it's called ACF 50. It's this stuff. And it's like WD-40++, and what it does, it puts a protective sealant over any sort of aluminium areas, well, obviously anywhere you spray it, and that's really good on the Testarossa. So what I do for a journey like this, I know it's going to be a bit wet and there is a chance of a bit of salt around. I take all the wheels off and I do all the suspension on each corner, and then I tack it from underneath as well, and also do the engine bay from top and bottom. I'm lucky enough to have a pit at home, so I go underneath, spray this all over it, and I know that's going to protect it for this sort of short, sharp journey like we're about to go on now. And then when I'm back, I'll get Richard Tipper and Perfection in again, and we'll give the car a complete wash, and that way I can get rid of any effects of the salty water and stuff like that. Right, let's go and have a look at what the packing I've got to do. Okay, the main thing I want to take down to put on the boat are these Brompton bikes. So how do you put two Brompton bikes in a Testarossa? Well, I'm going to show you. Okay, the boot. Now, a Brompton fits in here quite nicely. I have also this, which is for when I just check the wheel nuts. It's a giant nut, so I can do with a single bolt on the wheels. So I know I can get one bike in, but what happens if I take all this out and expose the wheel well here? I discovered I can actually get two Bromptons in if I take the spare wheel out. So then the dilemma is, well, I don't really want to lose a spare wheel. The spare wheel has not been used since this car hit the road in 1987, but the law of sod will intervene, I'm sure. If I take the spare wheel out and drive 2,000 miles down to the bottom of France and back up again, I'm going to need a spare. So no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to put one bike Brompton in here with a load of bags, and then I found another place where a Brompton goes on a Testarossa, which I'm going to show you now. So, where do you put a Brompton? Well, I have discovered that if I'll just tip this seat down, if I can remember where the switch was, there it is, and remove this strap here. There's a little bench here, and on this bench, believe it or not, I bring the Brompton in. So obviously, I don't know, I'm not quite sure when the Brompton came out, but remarkably it fits perfectly on that rear parcel shelf. It's like it's meant, but I think the Testarossa coming out in 1987, I don't think the Brompton's that old. So there you go, you can get a Brompton in a Testarossa. In fact, you get two, one in the front and one behind the seat. Okay, I need to do the rest of the packing now. It's late, we're up very early in the morning, so next time you join me, we'll be either in France or on the Eurotunnel or somewhere like that. See you later. Okay, well, we're about an hour into the journey from home. Things were going very well to begin with. We left home in pitch darkness, and the heater was going, and we going towards Oxford, and then it started to mist up, so I just pressed one of the funny buttons down here that sort of shove it at the windscreen, and it sort of cleared, the mist cleared, and I put it back to normal. We just noticed that the cabin was starting to get cooled down a bit, and there wasn't any heat coming through. So I've been fiddling with the heater knobs and the fan and pressing everything, and gradually it's been getting colder and colder. And now we're on the M25, and if you look down, it's really quite chilly in here now. I've borrowed my wife's coat. It's a very nice coat, so I'm very proud of it. It's quite a nice blanket. This isn't going well. We've got about 1,000 miles to go, and it's quite chilly. I wish it would warm up. So I can see already there's going to be a phone call to Bob Houghton's Ferrari experts close to me. How do you get the heater to work? Okay, well, we've gradually chilled ourselves looking at the frosty landscape outside. You can just feel if anybody's into motorbikes, you know that chill you get and your feet go first and things. So we've done that down the motorway, and now we're at Eurotunnel just queuing, and I've noticed the engine's running really cold, and now it's started to warm up because it's ticking over because we're just sitting in traffic. We have heat, which is a big relief. So yeah, there's something to do with the engine running really cold. We're going through passport control now, so we probably better put the video camera away, but it's so lovely to have heat. Okay, well, we've arrived at Flexi Plus, Eurotunnel, favourite place. I think now I've got the temperature up of the engine and the heater's come back on, what I'm going to do is actually block the radiator or put a sort of newspaper down just to get the heat in the engine a little higher. Obviously, I've not really used the Testarossa when it's at 0 degrees or -1 as it was this morning, so obviously there is something going on with a thermostat on the engine or something. But right now, I'm going to go in, hot coffee time, even a hot chocolate, and go and hug a radiator. Yeah, whenever you're on a Eurotunnel and you're in a bit of a silly car, you have two options. With the Zonda, I always used to take the high vehicle route, you're in with the coaches and things, because you'll see at either side of the Eurotunnel is these curbs, and if you're in something really wide, they're just perfectly designed to just knacker your wheels as you go drive down the train like this. Fortunately, the Testarossa comes from an age, yes, it's a wide car, but it's not nearly as wide as today's supercars, so I'm going in the regular normal route and it's just easier. So it's just well worth noting, if you own an Aventador or something mad like that, do take the high vehicle route. Don't ever think of coming in here. Okay, well, it's still doing this strange thing with the heating. So we set off from Eurotunnel with heat, and as we go down the auto route, it gets cold again, and the temperature gauge is right down. Feeling the radiators, if you just kneel down, I feel the radiators, they're cold. So I'm gonna try and pick up some litter. I'm sorry if you write for this magazine. What is it? Something Cruises and Caribbean Blitz. But I'm gonna see if I can just thread this into the rad. Right, there you go. I don't know if you can see down there. Zoom in a bit, you might see there's a magazine stuffed in there. What I must do is go and do it on the other side, and hopefully that'll work and we'll have a bit of heat in the car. Well, morning. Day 2 of this trip down to Antibes. We stayed at a great hotel last night. Well, we're still here. It's just in Écurie, which is just north of Lyon. It's almost in Lyon. I think the star feature of this hotel is actually its staircase, which is a rare thing. Just a beautiful old villa. Really good menu as well. Great place to stay. Now, I said last night about Testarossa and heater. I went on Ferrari Chat last night. It's one of the few forums I visit, but it has the depth of knowledge on there is surreal. And it turns out the Testarossa has a major heating issue. Most people's heaters don't work. Something you only discover when you go out in November. there's a whole load of relays you have to check, and heater valves. Sounds a nightmare. But one guy on the forum had a clever tip, and that was to get one of those heaters that you see lorry drivers with, where they plug into the cab. So it's been wild this morning. Wait for this to go through. So we're going to have a look on one of the fuel stops on the auto route and just see if we can get one of those heaters, because it turns out Testarossas do not basically work in the winter. Now, we're going to start up. It's lovely, it's sort of autumn colours. Today we're going to go down to Antibes. It's only about 300 miles. We did 660 miles yesterday, so it's 1,000 miles all in. We've just got about another 4 hours and we're on the coast. See you there. The heater issues with the Testarossa are sort of forgotten about now, because it's about 12-14 degrees outside, and the cabin's absolutely fine, so you wouldn't know there was an issue with the heater now. The Testarossa is still really impressive for this sort of long trips, because it's got this monster great fuel tank. I measured it twice, I brim checked it twice. You get a knock on the door of 400 miles from a tank, which is really quite a lot. And the first one was 20.3 to the gallon, and the second one was 21.2. So yeah, not bad when you're on the cruise. As I say, it's an indicated 90. Okay, well, we're just 11 kilometres now before we turn off, and I'm on that auto route. If you ever drive in France and you're coming down to the Riviera, it's the last bit of auto route. I mean, it's a really, if it can be, a romantic auto route, because you see Saint-Tropez, you see Provence, you see Cannes, and it sort of keeps you going. As you can see today, it's a bit grey down here. Unfortunately, yes, it does rain on the Riviera as well, and according to my phone app, we have a weather event happening tonight and all day tomorrow, just very heavy rain alert. Bit of a shame, but we'll make the most of today, and then we're just going to thread our way through Antibes and then try and get it parked as close to the boat as we can, which is always a bit of fun when you rock up in a very wide Ferrari and their little narrow streets, but we'll see how we get on. One thing, if you travel in France a lot, you should get one of these, little tag for the auto route. If you go on the Eurotunnel site, you'll see how you can just sign up for one. And when you do, that happens when you get up to the barrier. And why it's so important? Keep left. Why it's so important is because in a right-hand drive car, it's a complete pain when you come up to the tolls, but not with this. Worth its weight in gold. Right, very nearly there.
You have reached your destination.
So we have. Well, welcome to Antibes, the actual port. The boat's somewhere down there or something. Long drive, 966 miles. I'm very glad to be here, and it's not raining. And now it's a matter of unpacking the car, and you'll see now why we've brought the bikes down. Right. Been a while since I put one of these up. Well, quite close to the top of that. That up there, that in there. Pops in there. Pedal. Got a pedal. Job's a good one. Right. I'm off to find a boat. Well, morning. Riviera weather not, I'm afraid. We've been holed up in Antibes for a couple of days because the weather just descended. Torrential rain and amber warnings, and the marina's filling up with all sort of logs and all sorts of stuff. So no chance of actually taking the Ferrari out. But before we do the last bit of packing, I want to show you up the front, because there was one more packing challenge with this car. The Bromptons, 2 Bromptons in it, piece of cake. This is a bit special, because what I'm going to take back to the UK, I don't know if you can see that, is an outboard, and that's a 15 horsepower Yamaha outboard. Off the tender, I've replaced the motor and gone to a bigger engine, and look at that, just made for it. Amazing that you can get an outboard in a Ferrari Testarossa. So there we go. Right, I'm going to do the last bit of packing and we'll set off and just see if we can find some fun roads on the way home. Very different to the rest of the Riviera. The coastal roads are always a bit suspect for driving, really, because they're heavily used, and they promise much but often fail to deliver, I'm afraid. But up in the hills there are some really special roads, and that's where we're going now. I wanted to show you just some roads I know from my Evo days and when we had car launches down here, because there's a little secret spot on the Riviera, and that's between Cannes and Fréjus. If you look on the map, typically the map I brought with me just cuts off Cannes, which is here. But there are 2 routes. There's a coast road round here. Now, I wouldn't recommend this one in the summer because it gets very busy. There's lots of holiday homes all around it. But in the winter months, you might strike it lucky. The downside is there's quite a lot of built-up area at either end of it. So the good bit is, well, it's marginal in a car. It's okay on a bike, but marginal in a car. But there's a great road over the top and through the Massif. It has a look of Tenerife almost around here. It's called the RN7, or the Col, we're trying to decide how to pronounce it, but there it is in the background. Not super high, as you can see, 248 metres, because we're right down by the coast. But when you're staying on the Riviera, it's worth just dropping by this, because it bypasses the A8. You can come off at Cannes and get back on at Fréjus if you're coming along the autoroute. Now 18 months since we did that Sahara trip in this Testarossa, and when we got back there was a bit to do to it. The engine was due a cam belt change anyway, so that meant the engine was coming out. So we took the engine out, and while it was out, I actually gave it a really big clean. So actually the bell housing came off. We did actually replace the clutch as well. So there was quite a lot of work to do like that after the Sahara, really, just to bring it back into the sort of condition it was before we set off. But since then, I was going down to Goodwood one time and it suddenly went to 1 bank of cylinders. One of the plus sides on a 12-cylinder car, that if it loses some cylinders, there's normally, there was enough left to keep us going. So on 6 cylinders, got back home, and it turns out it was the fuse box on the front of a Testarossa. They're quite a weak point, another weak point of the Testarossa, because they take a lot of load. All the fuel pumps go through this sort of this fuse board, and it basically starts to melt, and over the years it gets worse and worse until it just gives up the ghost and all the soldering needs replacing. There's a company, a Ferrari specialist in America, who do a replacement board, so that's gone in it. It's about £2,000 or thereabouts to have that done. So a fair bit of work. I also had the handling checked out. There was a little bit of positive camber on the rear, not enough towing. It's a real bore setting up the chassis on a Testarossa. It's putting shims in, bolting it all back together again, and then measuring. There's no nice sort of bolt change, vary in situ. It's quite a lot of work. but that's transformed it. It's a really much better handling car now. There was always a slight bit of movement on right-handers. That's gone completely, so I'm very pleased. Thank you, Bob Houghton, Ferrari specialist, sorting that out. So that's it really. So that's a little update on where we are with the Testarossa. As I say, it remains a bit of a favourite at the garage because it's a good GT. You can see what we can get in the boot, and just having it next to the Countach is just a sort of boyhood dream. Anyway, we're going to hit the motorway again now. We're going up towards Troy tonight because I've got a favourite chateau I want to drop by and pick up some refreshments for Christmas. So we'll see you later. Well, morning, it's the last day, push back to the UK. It's not far now, it's about 400, 500 miles today. I always just check it over as you do this sort of car in the morning, see what there is under here. It's a glorious sight anyway. I am having to add some water though, just look a bit low. I put antifreeze in before the trip, so I don't mind adding straight water, but yeah, just wonder if that's something to do with the heater, but yeah, I've added a litre this morning, 2 bottles of this. If you discover your car's using a bit of water, it's always worth checking the oil just to see, horror of horror, there might be a head gasket going. There you go, so that's clean. If that had been cloudy on there, I'd really start to worry, but it's clean. You can't check dry sump this engine, see I can't check the oil until the engine's been running, so you have to check it hot, so you do it when you're fueling up or something. Right, let's get going, get it going. Okay, well we just spent half an hour tasting various champagnes. God, what a morning that was. Fantastic fun. A little tricky when you're driving a Ferrari back to the UK, so we went particularly easy, but I've somehow managed to purchase 14 bottles of champagne that I've now got to squeeze in here. We've come here because Devaux, they produce my favourite champagne, is this one. D'Or de Perdi, this Eye of the Partridge champagne. Apparently it's only for the UK market, but if you look in the boot, front of this Ferrari, somehow I'm going to try and squeeze 14 bottles of champagne in there, which is going to be a bit tricky, but anyway, Christmas wouldn't be the same unless we get it home. I'm sure we'll find one. We'll find something to chuck out if we can't get it all in. I want to just show you where we are, because this is another little Evo route that we used to do. So you're coming down towards Troy on the auto route, and if you get off, it's junction 22 and you get off at Bar-sur-Seine, and then we used to go along this route down to Dijon. Just takes I mean, it's slightly shorter. Yes, it's a bit longer. It might be 20 minutes longer, but it's a great route. And you can actually stop off with a source of the Seine is somewhere up here as well. But it's this is actually where this champagne house is, literally just outside Bar-sur-Seine. So that's half the reason I sort of know this area, just because it's a great Evo route. Just if you had enough of the auto route and you're driving down to Riviera, this is a nice little escape route. Anyway, I better go and get the champagne and work out how I'm going to get it in the car. Oh dear. Yeah, this is going to be a bit of a challenge. I think there's some room down here. Yeah, a few underneath the engine, I think. Let's try this way out. Yeah, that'll go like that. That's in. Any more? Bung one up there. Right, I think we're champagned up. Time to go. Okay, we're almost at the end of the trip. As you can probably tell, I'm just on the shuttle, the Eurotunnel, just leaving. You can see that we're actually in a regular carriage, because the great thing about 80s supercars is they're not nearly as big as you think they are, so they fit down a regular carriage. And also the tyres are quite tall, so I'm not worried about curbing it or anything. I can feel that weight in the nose, which is hardly a surprise when you think up front, you know, an outboard, fairly ridiculous, and then 14 bottles of champagne after that lovely visit to that chateau on the way home. Been a great trip. Hope you enjoyed being along for the journey as well. Weather not quite so good in the French Riviera as I would have hoped, but it was great to finally get that one day on some just as we were leaving. So we're going to head back home, unload the boot, which will take a while. Hope you enjoyed this trip. If you enjoyed the video, please keep watching and subscribing. More videos along very soon.